Barcelona gave F1's 11 teams the most brutal test of their cars so far this year and exposed some serious weaknesses. The Spanish circuit is a proper stress test of aerodynamic performance and the all-round car and engine package, giving us the clearest read of every team's main limitation yet and dishing out a few painful reality checks. Barcelona was the first race since it was decreed Mercedes doesn't have F1's best engine, at least according to the FIA. So there's a twisted kind of humour about it finally being defeated because someone else's car was simply faster. The W17 is clearly good and not just a mediocre car elevated into a great one by a mega power unit. There was already more than a hint of its impressive downforce in Monaco, where Kimi Antonelli blitzed the opposition on a track that obviously isn't power sensitive. And putting 3 temps on customer McLaren at a proper aero track like Barcelona showed the cars a one-lap potency. But Mercedes' bid to win faded when early race leader George Russell started struggling in the second and third stints, and its faster driver Kimi Antonelli was happier with the pace of the car, which was a silver lining, but he retired late on with yet another Mercedes technical problem. That is particularly alarming given Russell failed to finish in Canada a few weeks ago, and McLaren has had several Mercedes electrical problems this year. Russell called it a big concern, and the lack of pace he had on the hard compound gives Mercedes homework to do on the car side too. The early season narrative that Ferrari had F1's best chassis was reignited by Lewis Hamilton's Barcelona win, but the SF26 had already won serious praise earlier in the weekend. McLaren's Lando Norris called Ferrari the class leader in cornering performance after qualifying when Hamilton only narrowly missed out on pole. Given there remains a presumed deficit of a few tenths of a second on the engine side depending on circuit layout, this weekend was massively encouraging for Ferrari as its significant car upgrade lifted its overall performance level and seemed to give it a tyre degradation edge too. The latter was exaggerated by a mix of the extremely hot conditions and favourable circumstances giving Hamilton an advantage in the final stint, but Charles Leclerc still felt there was a big step with the car this weekend. Now it just needs a new engine. Everyone acknowledges Ferrari is better in the corners than on the straights, which is partly due to a draggy car, but the power unit is weaker overall. Ferrari's been permitted 2 upgrades due to the FIA measuring the V6 as weaker than the Mercedes and, controversially, the Red Bull Ford engine in particular. But it has a deployment deficit to overcome too, judging by how little Russell had to sacrifice on the run to turn 1 in qualifying to then be faster than Hamilton down every single straight thereafter. Rumour has it that Ferrari's been working on its first engine upgrade for a long time in anticipating of getting an Audi upgrade, so let's see what it brings and when. The long wait for Adrian Newey's Aston Martin team to upgrade its woeful car has left it the worst on the grid, irrespective of Honda's engine deficit. Aston Martin warned from the start this would be a bruising weekend, and so it proved. It barely improved from 4 seconds off the pace in practice and wasn't just the slowest car, it was a second off Cadillac. Fernando Alonso said it's the worst car married to the worst engine. There are problems on both axles in ride quality, traction, braking, downshifting, and sheer high-speed performance. It leaves Alonso and Lance Stroll as lambs to the slaughter, only put out of their misery here by a return of Honda's reliability woes that caused a double DNF. Alpine rescued another weekend from a bad start, and this one took a particularly big salvage job. The retirements for Antonelli, Charles Leclerc and Nico Hülkenberg all helped, as did the timing of the first virtual safety car, so that flattered the Alpine double score. But Pierre Gasly and Franco Colapinto were working their way to the front of the midfield anyway, with superior race pace, as once again the Alpine was better on Sunday than Saturday. What is vexing F1's best of the rest team most is why its one-lap pace is so inconsistent and at its worst so mediocre. Its car has tended to sap the confidence of one of its drivers on any given weekend, but here both struggled in qualifying, then were much happier with the balance on high fuel. Alpine's somewhat out of sync with other teams on upgrades, bringing its next one at the next race in Austria, so this might have exaggerated the specific qualifying struggle of Spain, but it doesn't change the underlying trend. Williams suffered a specific knock-on consequence of its underdeveloped, overweight car at Barcelona, as tyre degradation being so high even over a single lap, let alone a race stint, left it badly exposed. Carlos Sainz said, "Everyone's degging, we're just degging 2 times more," as the compound losses of a car that's light on downforce and heavy led to more sliding and more tyre problems. Alex Albon suffered from this even worse than Sainz did. Williams just had no answer to the tyre demands of this race, which inevitably meant for a painful Grand Prix. Sainz said that at a track like this, you finish where the car deserves to finish, which was 12th for him even with the retirements of the others, and an unclassified 18th for Albon, 11 laps down after a camera issue just to make things even worse. This was the weekend world champion Lando Norris admitted it's tough for McLaren to realise we're not at the same level as what we were, even though the race offered a silver lining. Though Norris inherited a podium through Antonelli's late failure and was close enough to be a nuisance to Mercedes in this race, the momentum McLaren built across Japan, Miami and Canada had been replaced by the realisation of clear tyre-related issues. Barcelona's faster sweeping layout suited the McLaren better, but its tyre temperature control is not as masterful as in previous years. In Monaco, McLaren couldn't switch its tyres on. In Spain, McLaren was hit and miss at keeping them alive. And when it was bad, it was really bad. Oscar Piastri finished more than half a minute adrift of his teammate and more than 18 seconds behind Max Verstappen's Red Bull and was at a loss to explain why. McLaren didn't have much of an answer either, only admitting a development priority with this car is finding a way to put the tyres in the right range. This was the first time Racing Bulls got to run the upgrade package it introduced a couple of races ago on a high-speed circuit, and it revelled in how well this worked, at least in qualifying. For the third time this season, it qualified as the lead midfield car, with the only downside being Arvid Lindblad missing out on Q3 due to a deployment issue. It was so quick that Racing Bulls is now the fastest midfield team on average this season. But this didn't translate into a stronger race pace, even though the final result was still a double points finish. It was beaten by Alpine, which came as a surprise given how far apart they'd been in qualifying. And the degradation challenge here should have meant having a faster car was beneficial for backing the pace off and looking after the tyres. A couple of races ago, Liam Lawson wasn't too thrilled after a strong P7 in Canada precisely because the result flattered a tricky Grand Prix. So there's definitely something not quite optimal about where this car's Saturday-Sunday balance is pitched right now.
Today's video is brought to you by the Armour All Podium Series, a premium line of car cleaning, detailing and air freshening products made in collaboration between Armour All and Oracle Red Bull Racing. Engineered with precision and expertise featuring SiO2-based hybrid ceramic technology, the Armour All Podium Series products are formulated to meet the elite performance standards of Oracle Red Bull Racing, so you can achieve podium-worthy results on your vehicle at home. Fans of the race have had a chance to try the Armour All Podium Series products on their cars, and they said the results are incredible. From the tyre shine to the interior detailer and spray wax, this line has everything you need to clean and detail your vehicle like the Oracle Red Bull Racing team. The Armour All Podium Series is available now online and in store. Find out where to buy and more information at armourallpodiumseries.com. The Armour All Podium Series, the world's most elite car care.
It feels really uncharitable to be critical of Audi when Nico Hülkenberg only lost a likely points finish because of a freak incident. Gravel kicked up by Lawson penetrated the cockpit of Hülkenberg's car and even managed to hit its electric kill switch, which shut the car down and it couldn't be restarted. In isolation, this is just terrible luck, but it serves as an extreme example of how Audi leaves itself too exposed. Because its car is so quick that it should have two in the mix for points at every race, but yet again, one wasn't in the picture because of a terrible start. Gabriel Bortoleto got swamped off the line, which seemed to be just another case of big Audi turbo equals bad start. And that meant when it went wrong for Hülkenberg, other teams picked up the pieces instead. It's a shame because this is arguably the most well-rounded car in the midfield. It's near the front of it at every type of track, with Barcelona checking yet another box. Cadillac is properly on the fringe of the midfield now, but still operationally light, as some deployment issues in qualifying and a brake problem in practice show. More concerning performance-wise is that its pace falls off a massive cliff, Sergio Perez says, when stints run longer than 15 laps, which forced Cadillac to run shorter stints than its immediate rivals at Barcelona and onto a 3-stop strategy. He believes the team understands why, but thinks it will take a few races before anything arrives to help with that. So that's clearly the main limitation for the package as it exists right now, beyond the obvious lack of downforce. Still, this was another impressive weekend pace-wise. Aside from thrashing Aston Martin, Cadillac flirted with beating cars from Haas and Williams in Q1, on a track that should have ruthlessly exposed any massive downforce deficiency. The fact Cadillac was better here than it has been on average shows that the worst of its aerodynamic load weakness at the start of the year has definitely been eradicated. This Grand Prix has underlined the suspicion that Haas has a fundamental weakness linked to how usable the downforce its car produces is. The Haas suffers from what Ollie Bearman calls a very incredibly narrow window. It's tricky to drive with instability on entry that becomes understeer mid-corner but can still be quick. Fall off the knife edge though, and you have what Bearman called the worst car I've ever driven in my life in Barcelona FP3. Haas already had a strong inkling of this pre-weekend, hence running a few tests through practice because it knew Barcelona would provide clear data and help it map out a development solution over the coming weeks and months. But a tricky car is not being helped by messy operations, as team boss Ayo Komatsu was critical of the job Haas did as a team in Spain too. Red Bull had low expectations for Barcelona, as Max Verstappen described its car as not particularly great in high-speed corners. This seemed to be confirmed on Friday, where Red Bull was just a bit behind everywhere on a track that has a bit of everything, although it made a good step come qualifying to split the McLarens and only be 3/10 off the pace. Verstappen was surprised the gap shrunk the way it did, while Isaac Hadjar suggested the result was better than the feeling he had in the car would suggest. But 3/10 is still a reasonable margin around a short-ish lap, and that showed in the race as Verstappen gradually faded away from the lead Mercedes, Ferrari and McLaren. He reckons that high-energy tracks with high degradation are exposing Red Bull the most right now, but it is simply the 4th fastest team, and he admitted, "We're not going to solve it with just changing the setup."